So I'll just get those pieces in place and show you what the end result looks like. Well, as in life, things are never as simple as they may be. So what ended up happening when I tried to remove the pipe from the inside of this was it ended up shattering old plastic. So what to do then? Well, what I did was I ended up putting a join, cutting off the collar of this guy, carving out the outer circumference of the join, and then welding it using straight up glue for this type of plastic and gluing it in. Now, to be doubly safe, I'm going to have to put a bead of silicone around this join just to make sure, although I think it's pretty good. And now I can continue on with installing the necessary plumbing, because I now have a joint point where before I didn't, and that's a clean joint point. So the only point where there may be some issues is right on this seam right here. So what I did was I applied more glue to the outside of the seam in the hopes of welding it together, and I will then put silicone, and I will most likely also put tape over the silicone to put a little bit of tension there. And hopefully I'll never have to go under there again. Of course, having cut this out, I have to replace the entire section that goes to the sink. That's not a big deal, it's just a few pieces of plastic. And then I'll be able to create the remainder of the P-trap for, or the high loop they call it, for the dishwasher now. This was by far, in every project there's always one stage that's really tricky, and it makes or breaks the project. In this particular case, it was this modification. You'll see that the original flange is an outer, whereas this is an inner. But I think I'm okay because the water is going to flow in to this and then fall into there, so it doesn't create a barrier, seeing as I've inserted this pipe into the T-joint there. I don't know if this is up to code. I doubt it. But I took a look at the outside, thinking that maybe I would just replace all of the piping coming in, only to find that I don't know where that drain goes. It doesn't seem to have an obvious exit point on the exterior of the house. So that means that if I wanted to mess around with that drain, I would have to maybe tear this cabinet out. I don't want to do that. So worst case scenario, I might have a little bit of a minor leak here, but remember, this drain stuff isn't under any pressure. So if you can properly seal it, you should be okay. That's my hope. So what I'm going to do, of course, is hope for the best and keep moving. But this project is now back on track. It took well over 2 hours to mess around with this thing, so I hope it worked out, and I hope that that's going to be serviceable. But I think so. I took my time, and I used my Sharpie and my utility knife, and I very carefully made the rough opening, and then I used the glue, which is this stuff, to melt. What happens is the plastic kind of dissolves a little bit when you apply the glue. So if you get it close and then you apply the glue to the outer circumference, you can sort of jam it in and move it around and get it reasonably like while it's still, you have some setting time, maybe 10 seconds or so, where you can sort of, goop it in there and move it around and get all the plastic melted together, twist it a little bit, and then hold it, and then you'll feel the resistance growing and growing and growing to the point where you can't move it anymore. And that's when you just let it be, and then of course wait maybe a minute, and then apply more of this stuff to the outside of the joint, because that's an ad hoc, in Quebec we would say au pif type of connection, which means bodged in English, and you really want to have as much welding of the plastic as you can possibly get. Anyways, enough talk. The next part to do is get this T-joint in and get it lined up on the sink. It's pretty close. It might have to come in at a slight angle, but I think I've got enough play in the pipe to do that. And then once I've got the sink set up and the T-joint set up, I can then move on to putting the second P-trap in, and this particular install will be finished. Okay, so now what we're going to do is dry fit all of the plumbing parts before we glue them together and mark them with a marker so we know when we assemble how everything goes. You can see that here we have a T-joint that goes from 40 millimeters to 32, and that's because this T-joint shattered and I had to rebuild it with a pipe joint, which I did yesterday. Now everything's dried up and it's looking pretty good. So the next thing to do is to put another T in. So we have a piece that goes this way for the dishwasher and a piece that goes this way to connect the sink back up. Whoever cut this off didn't do a very nice job, but whatever. It's got an adjustable collar so that that basket trap can go up and down, but there's not a lot of lateral. So the way I would probably do this is I would design it so that if I need to take the trap off, I drop it off the bottom. So that means that this has actually got too much pipe. It should probably be about there. So I'm going to cut this guy off around here, I figure. It's just too long, and it makes the baskets extremely difficult. This one is impossible to take off. This one I want it to be a little more easy, so I'm going to cut this one off a little higher. You can tell that it's got plenty and plenty and plenty of run length on it. So I'm not too worried about taking an inch or two off the bottom of this stem here. And then everything should come together a little more easily. Now in terms of this pipe, what I do is to prepare the pipe, I use 120 grit sandpaper to make sure that the adhesive, I only get one shot with that adhesive, and with this older piping and pipes that have been sitting on the shelf for who knows how long in the hardware store, I just give them a nice roughening to make sure that that adhesive has plenty and plenty of clean surface to adhere to. And it helps me think and relax. I find that if I'm relaxed when I do this work, I do better work. So I don't rush, I just take my time. You can use a finer grit if you like, 200, 400, whatever. But I just grabbed whatever I had. That makes for a nice smooth entry. Now this T, I've already prepared it. You can probably maybe see how rough the surface is. That gives the adhesive plenty of area to do its magic. That's going to go in here. I don't want to be too rough on this joint because it's not much of a joint, and that basket trap is going to come in at a bit of an angle, but it should be okay. I could always shorten the joint. Now the one thing that you should remember is that when you put the PVC in with the adhesive, it's wet and it goes in further than you can dry fit by a little tiny bit. So if you make your joints a bit fat, it's not a problem. I mean, don't go crazy. I'm talking about half a centimeter maybe. But they'll slide in pretty far when they're wet with that joint adhesive PVC glue. Now this piece of plastic is only supposed to show 1 centimeter of shaft between these two connectors when it's finally together. So I'm thinking that's okay. 1 centimeter is not going to kill anybody, and it's going to make that thing easier to maintain should I ever need to get back in there. So currently it's showing about 1.5 centimeters, and that basket trap is coming in. Let's have a look-see. Yeah, so this guy drops quite far. quite far down. Don't need anywhere near that much. I mean, it's bottoming. It's actually bottoming out. So you could probably have this much gone, and it wouldn't make a difference to the function of this thing. So that's what we're going to do to make it easier to maintain. And now it's got to get from here to here. And we can use a joint like this, which is, this is smaller diameter, it's 32, and this is 40. So I need a little piece of 40 and a little piece of 30 of go like that, and I could probably just get it just right with an adapter in the 45 degree, and this adapter will connect these two, and then a small piece of 40 millimeter coming out of this 45 degree falling into this thing, and that should complete our joint. So I just need a piece of 40 to fit between these two things, like a small piece, maybe that long, I mean maybe 5 centimeters long, and then a piece of 40 millimeter to connect these two. So the next piece I'm going to cut will be the 40 millimeter, and the reason why is there's play inside the basket. So I can slide it back and forth on there, whereas this piece here, that's all going to be fixed pipe like that. This piece is too long, but that gives you an idea of what we're looking for, and then once we get the angles all right, it'll just connect up at a slight angle. It used to be straight back, now it's going to be at a slight angle, and it doesn't bother me at all, because this thing rotates around, slides back and forth, up and down, because it's not fixed, it's two tensioners. So what you do is you make sure that your fixed piping is more or less within tolerance, and then you put the basket on. Personally, I think the last joint, I'm not quite sure, but my guess is the last joint to be done should be the join, this one. I'll be very gentle with that connector. Just a second. There's almost nothing there in terms of material. We've got to be really gentle. So the last joint that I would do would be the first one. Could be this one, or the final fit between this piece and this piece, just sliding in there, getting it positioned just right, and that's it. So we're gonna try to fit all this stuff now. Here's the pipes all marked out. Next step is just glue them and see how we're doing. The last one to do is the final joint to the T down there. Aside from that, should go fine. Everything dry fit correctly. So now we start gluing.
I hope you liked this video. If you did, please consider subscribing, giving me a like, and leaving me a comment. I really enjoy making these videos, and I want to know from you how I can make them better. The whole point of these videos is to demonstrate that if I can do something, you can do it too. Well, that's it for now. So long, and remember, keep making.